A Las Vegas judge attacked in her own courtroom is recovering at home tonight. And according to court documents,
call the next witness. Do you think I'm kidding?
Courtrooms are meant for justice, not chaos. But what happens when a defendant turns on the judge in a fiery, unrelenting attack? These attacks can be in different forms, ranging from verbal accusations or insults to physical attacks, or even filing charges. In a stunning twist, these cases spiraled from legal arguments to personal warfare, with the defendant hurling wild accusations and challenging the judge's authority. Was this a bold strategy or sheer desperation? And how will it impact the trial's outcome? When tempers flare and boundaries are crossed,
I would like to tell the courts everyone here,
the scales of justice hang in a delicate balance. Let's unravel the explosive confrontation that left everyone in shock and the courtroom. Imagine walking into a courtroom, expecting the usual solemn decorum of a high-stakes murder trial, only to find a charismatic and manipulative defendant playing both the accused and the defense attorney. This was the scene in 1979 when Ted Bundy, one of America's most infamous serial killers, stood trial for the brutal murders of multiple young women. But Bundy wasn't content to simply sit and listen to his fate being debated.
I'm not asking for mercy, for I find it somewhat.
No, he wanted center stage. And what followed was a courtroom drama like no other. Bundy, a former law student, had convinced himself that he could outsmart the legal system. He fired his court-appointed attorneys and decided to represent himself.
And receive the pain for that act. But I will not share the burden.
This wasn't just a legal strategy, it was a show. Bundy thrived on control and attention, and he knew the courtroom was his last stage. But his decision to play lawyer didn't sit well with Judge Edward Cowart.
This court, independent of, but in agreement with, the advisory sentence rendered by the jury does hereby impose the death penalty.
A no-nonsense man who had seen it all. From the get-go, Bundy and Cowart clashed.
I have been in Dade County. I have been allowed to...
Don't shake your finger at me, young man. Don't shake your finger at me, young man.
Of 1 1/2.
Bundy accused the court of conspiring against him, claiming his defense was being deliberately sabotaged. His final statement was, "I am not asking for mercy, because I find it absurd asking for mercy for what I didn't do." Cowart, known for his southern charm but firm demeanor, calmly reminded Bundy that the court was there to ensure justice, not to indulge theatrics. However, Bundy wasn't easily deterred. Bundy's antics ranged from procedural disruptions to outright manipulation.
A judge in Miami today followed the jury's recommendation and sentenced Theodore Bundy.
He cross-examined witnesses, including surviving victims, in an effort to intimidate and control the narrative. He often veered off course, making grandiose statements and throwing in legal jargon to confuse the jury and stall the trial. Judge Cowart had to frequently rein him in, warning Bundy to stick to legal arguments and follow courtroom protocol. One of the most dramatic moments came when Bundy tried to challenge the legitimacy of the court itself. He filed motions, objected to evidence, and even questioned Cowart's authority. In response, Cowart delivered sharp, measured rebukes, reminding Bundy that his legal knowledge didn't give him the right to undermine the judicial process. Despite the tension, there was an odd undercurrent of mutual respect. Cowart, in his own way, admired Bundy's intelligence, even if he saw through his manipulations. The tension reached its peak during Bundy's sentencing. After the jury found him guilty, Cowart handed down the death penalty. But before he did, he delivered one of the most memorable lines in courtroom history. In a surprising moment of humanity, Cowart told Bundy, "Take care of yourself, young man. I'd have loved to have you practice law in front of me, but you went another way, partner." This unexpected statement captured the bizarre duality of the trial. On one hand, Bundy was a cold-blooded killer, deserving of the harshest punishment. On the other, he was an intelligent man who, under different circumstances, could have been a talented lawyer. Ted Bundy might not have shown remorse, but fast forward a few decades to Larry Nassar, a gymnastics doctor who abused his power. Both trials showcased defendants desperate to manipulate the courtroom, but justice prevailed through the unyielding resolve of their judges.
He is the former MSU gymnastics team physician accused of atrocities. sexually assaulting scores of girls and women for decades.
In 2018, the world witnessed one of the most harrowing courtroom dramas in recent history during the sentencing of Larry Nassar. Once a revered doctor for USA Gymnastics, Nassar had used his position to sexually abuse hundreds of young athletes over decades. The trial was not just convicting a predator, but also about giving justice to survivors who had long been silenced. At the center of this historic reckoning stood Judge Rosemarie Aquilina.
Spending 4 or 5 days listening to them,
whose stance against Nassar became a symbol of justice. The courtroom was packed, the atmosphere charged with emotion as over 150 survivors, including Olympic gold medalists, bravely stepped forward to deliver their victim impact statements. They recounted the horrors they endured, many of them detailing how Nassar's abuse shattered their trust, confidence, and mental well-being. Each testimony was a gut-wrenching reminder of the extent of his crimes. Throughout this process, Judge Aquilina provided a safe space for these survivors. She listened intently, offering words of encouragement and compassion, turning the courtroom into a place of healing. However, Nassar, sitting silently in the defendant's chair, appeared unmoved. Then, in a shocking turn, he submitted a letter to the court, accusing Judge Aquilina of using the trial to gain media attention. In the letter, Nassar painted himself as a victim, claiming that the trial had become a media circus and complaining about the emotional toll of listening to the impact statements. It was a chilling display of his inability to comprehend the gravity of his actions or the pain he had caused. But Judge Aquilina was ready. In a powerful moment, Aquilina read parts of Nassar's letter aloud in court, exposing his self-serving narrative.
sentencing media circus. She wants me to sit in the witness box next to her for all 4 days.
Then, she delivered a searing response. This letter tells me you have not yet owned what you did. You still think that somehow you are right, that you're a doctor, that you're entitled, that you don't have to listen, and that you did treatment. I wouldn't send my dogs to you, sir. Her words cut through the courtroom's tensions like a knife. When it came time to sentencing, Aquilina didn't hold back. She sentenced Nassar to 175 years in prison, a punishment she described as signing his death warrant.
I signed your death warrant. I need everyone to be quiet.
Her decision was met with applause from the courtroom. A rare and profound moment in legal proceedings. Survivors stood, united in a sense of justice finally served. Judge Aquilina's handling of the case was lauded worldwide. She didn't just sentence a criminal, she validated the pain of hundreds of survivors and ensured their voices would echo long after the trial. In a system where victims of sexual abuse often feel overlooked, in the world of courtroom drama, few trials were as wild as Charles Manson's in 1970. It wasn't just about the law. It felt more like a chaotic stage play, with Manson at the center. Known as the leader of a murderous cult, Manson was accused of orchestrating a string of brutal killings. From day one, Manson made it clear he wasn't interested in following the rules. He didn't see himself as just another defendant. He acted like some kind of self-appointed prophet above everyone else. He constantly interrupted the trial, shouting accusations at Judge Charles Older, claiming the court was rigged against him. In Manson's mind, the judge, jury, and even the legal system were all part of a massive conspiracy to take him down. One of Manson's most infamous moments came when he stood up and declared, "This is not my trial. It is your trial. You are on trial before the world." His words sent a chill through the courtroom. He spoke with the same hypnotic charisma that had lured his followers into his cult. But Judge Older, a calm and composed figure, didn't let it shake him. He repeatedly warned Manson to stay quiet or risk being removed from the courtroom. But Manson wasn't done. When his words didn't create enough chaos, he resorted to shock tactics. In a dramatic move, he carved an X into his forehead with a razor, later claiming, "I have X'd myself from your world." The act was his way of rejecting society altogether. Not long after, his followers, some of whom were also on trial, did the same, carving X's into their own foreheads. Things escalated even further when Manson tried to physically attack Judge Older. He lunged at the judge, forcing court officers to restrain him.
May I examine him, Your Honor? No, you may not. I must fight for my life.
The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense. almost like a powder keg ready to explode. Security was tightened, with guards posted everywhere to prevent more disruptions. Despite Manson's constant attempts to derail the trial, Judge Older held firm. Day after day, Manson tried to take control, but the judge made sure the legal process continued. After months of chaos, the trial finally ended. In 1971, Manson and several of his followers were convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy. During sentencing, Judge Older made it clear how he felt. You, Mr. Manson, and your followers are depraved and cold-blooded killers.
Charles Manson, the infamous cult leader who led a string of murders in the 1960s.
The trial of Charles Manson wasn't just about punishing a criminal. It was a battle between law and madness. Manson tried every trick to manipulate the courtroom, but in the end, justice stood firm. Martin Shkreli, often called the Pharma Bro, became a household name for all the wrong reasons. Known for jacking up the price of life-saving drugs, his arrogance and controversial actions were already a topic of intense public debate long before he stood trial in 2017. But it was during his securities fraud trial that Shkreli truly cemented his place as one of the most polarizing figures in recent history, turning the courtroom into a stage for his bizarre antics and outbursts. Shkreli wasn't your typical defendant. Instead of playing the role of a remorseful man fighting for his freedom, he saw the trial as yet another opportunity to make himself the center of attention. From the get-go, he treated the proceedings like a joke. When it came time for opening statements, Shkreli couldn't resist mocking the seriousness of the situation. He would smirk, roll his eyes, and even laugh during testimonies. Things took a particularly dramatic turn when he began targeting Judge Kiyo Matsumoto, accusing her of being politically motivated. Shkreli, who had built a reputation for disregarding authority, wasn't about to back down when things got heated. In fact, he escalated the tension by openly mocking the judge, suggesting that her rulings were biased. His attacks on the court weren't just random insults. He seemed to genuinely believe that the trial was a political attack on him, the so-called bad boy of the pharmaceutical world. But Judge Matsumoto wasn't having it. Calm and composed, she didn't let Shkreli's antics derail the trial. She reprimanded him multiple times, keeping the trial on track, despite his best efforts to make a spectacle of it. At one point, she even revoked his bail for making online threats to a journalist, showcasing that her patience was running thin. The tension in the courtroom was palpable, with Shkreli's defiance growing as the trial continued. By the time the jury delivered its verdict, Shkreli had done everything in his power to make himself the villain of the story. He was convicted on charges of securities fraud and sentenced to 7 years in prison. But his courtroom behavior had already ensured that the world would remember this trial not just for its legal significance, but for the larger-than-life character at its center. Throughout history, we've witnessed courtroom drama that goes far beyond legal proceedings, with defendants like Ted Bundy, Larry Nassar, Charles Manson, and Martin Shkreli turning their trials into spectacles of chaos, manipulation, and defiance. Each of these figures tried to manipulate the court in their own unique way, but in the end, justice always prevailed, no matter how hard they tried to derail the truth. So, what's your take? Were these defendants truly above the law, or did they just underestimate the power of the justice system? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more stories of high-stakes courtroom drama. Stay tuned.